Hey everybody, this is Josh Ojima from the designmaketeach.com blog, and I wanted to show off my inking a 3D print technique. People have been asking about this for a while, so I'm giving you a camera eye view of my workbench. This is an experiment for me as far as the camera setup and using Google Hangouts to show the work. So right here is an example of the ink on PLA technique that I've been using. So this is my 3D printed SyFy. This is the design that I submitted for the Outsider Art Fair competition in New York in January. And so there's an example. So the great thing about this technique as compared to painting is when you use acrylic paints on 3D prints. So here's a print that was done in pink PLA. Typically what you have to do before you paint a 3D print is prime it. And a lot of times you want to do surface prep. You want to sand the surface down. You want to use a spray primer or a brush on primer like I used for this. I used a artist gesso. And then I went and dry brushed this with acrylic paint, but that takes a lot of prep work. So the technique that I'm going to be using today is straight alcohol-based ink onto a 3D print. The inks that I'm using are Jim Holt's Adirondack alcohol inks from Ranger Ink. And right here I have the Hunter's Skull by SyFy. They have a new show coming up that's going to premiere on April 11th, I believe. And so this is the skull of the bad guys, the alien terrorists. So a lot of work has obviously gone into the modeling here by SyFy Labs. I used a 0.8 millimeter tip on an Ultimaker 2. That definitely decreased the speed. A little bit of trouble trying to get all the infill out, but the surface itself, the outside surface, really, really nice. So what I've decided to do here for the inks, Adirondack has a wide variety of colors and shades, but I'm going to stick with kind of the earth tones here to kind of give the skull sort of kind of an antique sort of look. And so just as we're experimenting, I'm going to start it out with one of the lighter inks. So I'll start off with the latte ink. And what I'm imagining here is the closer the surface is, the higher up it is, probably the lighter it would be, and then the crevices and darker parts would be a little bit darker. I'm not trying to create an actual antique skull surface. I'm going to be a little bit more artistic here, but in general, that'll be kind of what I'm going for. So the alcohol-based ink here is not classroom safe. So what I'm going to do is take this dropper bottle and I'm just going to gently take that and put that on the surface. And you'll see as I do that, capillary action draws the ink along the layer lines of the model. And the reason why I like this technique so much is it kind of creates a texture or grain to the 3D print. It takes advantage of that layer surface to kind of create some interest here. It provides some variation in the tone and color. And so that's drawn along, and if I want to move it around a little bit, I can blow to sort of to push a dot of ink along. So right there, I can just choose a spot, little dot. Okay. Bit by bit. So this model is available for free on Thingiverse. SyFy has started putting a lot of different models to promote their different shows up. Don't know too much about the Hunter's show, except what I've seen in the trailers. seems to be sort of an allegory of alien as terrorists, and with the side order of alien technology kind of thrown into the mix. So I'm just going along and dotting to create these interesting kind of patterns and textures and grains in here. Now, if I wanted to take a small piece and color that in, I could just kind of drag this along to color in a line and spot. And so in an interest of symmetry, I'll come over to the other side and I'll kind of do this other side here. Okay, and so obviously you can see this latte is kind of a lighter color, and I'm just dotting this along here and there. Okay. Now you can apply this with felt or Q-tips, or even industrial sort of applicators, which sort of look like syringes. All right, so got a little bit of banding from the latte. I'm going to move on to a slightly darker color now, so I'm going to go ahead and take the caramel here. And start adding that in. And so the reason why I like this ink technique so much is because it adds kind of sort of this texture and character to the print that makes it read, instead of being sort of this really one color sort of plastic look, which actually works kind of well for the skull model, but starts giving it a grain and texture that's more familiar to us from natural objects. It reads more like a wood sort of grain to it. And so I think we perceive that grain structure as sort of having more value than just having a plastic object. So we're taking sort of this design that was printed and might read as kind of a toy or a tchotchke sort of thing, and making something a little bit more significant here. So really sort of trying to read the model and see how it's kind of pooling in the different crevices and things. So I'm kind of liking how this this is sort of turning out. And so I'm going to go back and do the lighter color here on the front. So this is the latte again. And this sort of multicolored texturing thing is just sort of the approach that I've taken, and I've really liked when using these inks here. And so again, it's that variation in that I find sort of really appealing here when working with the inks. So then back to the caramel. So these alcohol-based inks I found at the local craft store. AC Moore and Michaels both carry them in kind of their stamping area. And every time I go to the craft store, I kind of take it as an opportunity to look for things that might be interesting to apply to 3D prints. this sort of post-processing, I think, is kind of a ripe area. There's so many different materials, media available at these craft stores that I don't really think have been tried enough and documented for the 3D printing community. And so if you're a hobbyist in one area, you should kind of look through your bin of stuff and kind of see, well, which ones of these might be interesting on a 3D model, a 3D print. So right now I'm just working on PLA. I've seen some work by Rich Rep on, dyeing nylon using sort of RIT dyes, I believe. I've also had an article in Make about kind of using Sharpies on the 3D filament as it's going into the printer. Certainly a lot of other people have done that and have little gadgets for applying the Sharpie material to applying the Sharpie to the PLA. Artist Tom Burtonwood has done a lot with that. So I've switched over to a darker ginger, a little bit more in the red tones here. And so you can do kind of just little dabs, dab, dab, or you can do a nice big drop. And so I really like this hand application feel to using this, using the alcohol-based inks. It really makes it feel like a hand-colored sort of product as opposed to, just spray painting the model here. The nice thing about the alcohol-based inks, though, is that it's durable on the surface, doesn't rub off the same way that the acrylic paints do. But if you make a mistake, you can go in and use an alcohol wipe, or there's special blending fluid that that's available in this product line that you can use to sort of tone down the color. Now, the issue that you'll notice, though, is that the ink is really traveling along those layer lines, and depending on how well your layer adhesion is, the ink can go pretty deep into the model. And so while you'll be able to tone down the colors, in some cases you won't be able to totally remove it. Okay, and I kind of like how the ink is pooling into these little crevices here, providing some nice contrast. And I may be sure to put some of the darker color when we get to the final one or two here, to really kind of accent those crevices and really give some dimension to the piece. All right, so this is really sort of coming together here. Sorry, I'm into the work and not paying as much attention to my laptop screen. Right now I just have my webcam clamped to the top of my light box. Not quite as in focus as I was hoping, but hopefully it's enough to at least show you how I'm working the ink, working this technique. Okay, and I actually like these kind of lighter color stripes in here. So that's the kind of the base color, the pearlescent white from the Ultimaker filament. But that's really giving it a sort of a lot of character here. And so let's move on to one of the darker colors. So this would be the teak wood. Really a nice dark brown. And again, if I applied this and maybe thought it was just a bit too much, again, I could use the blending fluid or an alcohol wipe to kind of tone that down a little bit. All right, but I want to be sure to come in here in this eye hole and get some of that darker color in there. And again, you can squeeze out a whole entire drop. You can just sort of tap the surface on. I ordered some industrial applicators that really are syringes with sort of squared off tips. But the ones that I got were not as kind of precise as I was hoping for. And really what I found works are insulin syringes. Had a few of those from when my cat had diabetes. And so I had a few left over, and those have been really convenient for doing kind of precise applications of materials from time to time. So I don't want to go overboard with this darker teak wood, but I feel like it's adding a little bit here. And you know, there's definitely some randomness to this technique because the inks just sort of has a mind of its own a little bit with the capillary action and just using kind of the squeeze bottle approach. But I feel like that's what gives this technique sort of the artistic value and sort of transforming this sort of straight plastic one color object into something something new. So each one is going to be kind of an individual, one of a kind, hand painted experience or hand colored. All right, so maybe a little bit on the jaw here. Okay, I'm especially liking kind of the side. You do need to be careful sort of at the top. Some weird things can kind of happen with that. I may go just a little bit lighter on the top pieces. Again, sort of blowing here, getting some stripes in, put the little latte. So these top surfaces can act just a little bit differently sometimes than the horizontal surfaces, or vertical surfaces, excuse me. All right. And then I may go in and just sort of fill in a few spots here and there, or I see there's not quite enough color. So as you can see, this is a technique that that's really not that hard to do. The only thing that you might want to be careful of if it's going to be exposed to alcohol at some later point is to go ahead and do a spray coating on it. This last one that I haven't used before, I may test it sort of down here. That might be just a little bit, it's looking a little red, excuse me, a little purplish. So I'm actually not going to use that on the main model, but I think down here, if someone were to pick this up, adding a little bit of the purples underneath might sort of give a little extra alien characteristic to it. So I am going to, just in the back side here, add a little bit of unusual coloring to sort of pique the interest, kind of as a prop piece to say this is something sort of really alien here. So just kind of on this underneath side, I'm going to go ahead and use some of these darker colors, a little bit more interest there. Nice. Okay, I like the way it sort of travels along the layer lines there. So let's just finish off this underneath side. Go back in, add a few of our other colors. And I find having a nice palette of 4 or 5 colors really sort of adds to what's happening. And what you'll see on some of these, if you try this technique, is that the different colors will actually sort of blend in with each other, and that'll kind of create more tones and sort of shades of coloring there. So I like the fact that we still have some pearlescent white sort of reading as kind of bone there. But overall, I think I'm pretty happy where we are for the night. So again, this is the Hunter's Skull by SyFy. I'm Josh Ajima from the designmaketeach.com blog, and this is my inking a 3D print technique. Have a great day, and thanks for joining.